New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Julia Chapman.
Thanks, Tanvi. Coming up, Ukraine gets the green light for F-16 fighter jets, while Russia accuses it of terrorism. And Canada's military has been drafted in to fight wildfires. But first, the headlines.
The value of BRICS extends beyond the interests of its current members.
Ahead of the BRICS Summit starting Tuesday in Johannesburg, South Africa, President calls for expanding the economic bloc, says he intends to create positive opportunities for the continent, not just the country. As the countdown begins for Chandrayaan-3's landing on the moon, the lander module establishes successful two-way contact with the orbiter of Chandrayaan-2. After drenching northern Mexico, tropical storm Hilary hits Los Angeles with heavy rains. Record rainfall forecast. California's governor declares a state of emergency for the south of the state. And in chess, India's winning sensation R. Praggnanandhaa and Fabiano Caruana battle it out in the tiebreaker to decide who will contest the final against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen. Leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, BRICS, are seeking to develop deeper trade and economic ties. The BRICS bloc of the emerging world economies is holding its 15th summit in Johannesburg from August 22nd, that's tomorrow, to August 24th. Here's a look at the key focus areas at this year's 15th BRICS Summit.
This is the first time BRICS leaders are gathering since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. But the summit will be marked by the absence of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is participating remotely. The summit is expected to cover a wide range of issues. One of the key topics is the expansion of the group, as 40 countries have shown interest.
Them coming to the table with us will only strengthen the South-to-South cooperation that we need for a sustainable future. So I'm absolutely delighted that the countries have come knocking at the BRICS doors rather than us having to go to them.
BRICS members will also discuss cross-border trade in local currencies to reduce dependency on the US dollar. Altogether, the 5 member nations account for more than 40% of the world's population, and their combined GDP is more than 26% of the global economy.
The BRICS mechanism has the potential to become a crucial organization in determining global development. Its potential lies not only in the economy, but also in the various initiatives it promotes. In my view, the BRICS countries are ready to set a reform agenda for the current global economic order.
Promoting settlement in local currencies is a big issue that will be discussed during the summit. BRICS has emphasized financial cooperation since its establishment and has promoted the reform of the World Bank and IMF, as well as establishing the new development bank. BRICS opposes the hegemony of the US dollar and pursues the reform of the global financial system.
Experts say the summit is a major opportunity for BRICS leaders to counter Western dominance around the world.
India's foreign ministry has said that a business delegation from India is also traveling to South Africa to attend the business track meetings in this year's BRICS Summit.
The participants are likely to deliberate on issues such as global economic recovery amid ongoing geopolitical challenges, sustainable development goals, something that would, I think, continue throughout the different sessions of the BRICS Summit, women-led development, as also addressing the concern and interest and priorities of the Global South.
India's foreign ministry also added that India has a positive intent and an open mind regarding the expansion of the BRICS group of countries.
Insofar as the BRICS expansion is concerned, we have been very clear from the start that we have a positive intent and an open mind when it comes to the BRICS expansion. BRICS works under the modality and principle of consensus, and all the BRICS countries have to have full consensus on how they would want BRICS expanded, what should be the guiding principles of that expansion, what would be the criteria for such an expansion. Those are the subject matters of ongoing current discussions between the Sherpas of the BRICS in South Africa.
Staying with news from Johannesburg, India's BRICS Sherpa Damu Ravi spoke exclusively to DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh. He highlighted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's priorities during the BRICS Summit.
Johannesburg in South Africa is all set to host the 15th BRICS Summit. I have with me Mr. Damu Ravi, India's BRICS Sherpa. Welcome to DD India, sir. Now, this is the first in-person leader summit after the pandemic. How does that raise the expectations, and what is new in this edition of BRICS Summit?
All the leaders to meet in person in this important event. South African leadership, particularly the President, has done enormous work.
If you could take us through India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's priorities in this edition of the BRICS Summit.
Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a strong pitch for the development and the development dimension of the global discourse today. I think it dates back to the time when January earlier this year he hosted the Global South Summit, in which about 125 countries' leaders have participated. I think taking off from there, the deliberations within India's presidency of the G20 and the BRICS, there is a synergy developing, particularly the narrative on development coming from the developing countries' perspective, from the global south, and how we need to develop that perspective and put it in the right way of understanding the women-led development, the food security, bringing in millets into the context, and the lifestyle for environment when you talk about climate change and energy. These are the important dimensions that are being discussed, and thankfully, there is a lot of synergy within the BRICS discussions. So all of this are going to be captured in the Johannesburg Declaration that will come out at the end of the BRICS Summit. I think the focus here today is to do projects in the developing world using the new development bank resources and the technologies and the innovation that is happening in the BRICS countries. That's been very well brought out in the roadmap for economic cooperation among the BRICS countries. So eventually, gradually, these programs are being implemented in the BRICS countries, and Africa becomes a very priority country for all of us.
Really, Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks about the priorities of the global south in every international platform. How will the BRICS Summit also form a very, very important place to engage with those ideas for him?
Yes, I think some of the low-cost solutions that India has successfully introduced can be brought into the global south. I think one of which we've already discussed about the digital platform, the digital public goods is a very important enabler for development. And the second most important is the currency being discussed in the BRICS context right now. So again, Prime Minister has emphasized a lot on the doing trading in INR, so national currencies. So that's become now a priority item in the BRICS groups. And there'll be a more concrete action plan in the days ahead as to how to introduce it. So the global south and the BRICS fits in very well. And also we need to think that what is the success of the BRICS under the South Africa chairship will have its own positive impact into the India's G20 presidency. So because you have to understand, all the BRICS countries are also members of the G20. So we can create that kind of a close understanding on the global south issues and challenges.
Thank you very much for speaking with DD India. That was India's BRICS Sherpa Damu Ravi talking about the key themes in this edition of the BRICS Summit and India's priority at this global engagement. With camera person Ankit Rawat, Shubhendu Ghosh in Johannesburg for DD India.
Now let's turn to updates on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Denmark and the Netherlands have agreed to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. My colleague Julia Chapman is in London, gives us more on this and other stories making it to the headlines around the world. Let's go over to Julia now. Julia, over to you.
Russia has responded to the decision by Denmark and the Netherlands. The Kremlin says it will only further escalate the conflict.
The offer came 2 days after the Netherlands and Denmark said the US had authorized the country to deliver American-made F-16s to Ukraine. Zelensky traveled to both countries to finalize the delivery deal. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, meeting with Zelensky at a Dutch airways, said the planes would be delivered once specified conditions are met.
We can announce that the Netherlands and Denmark commit to transfer F-16 aircraft to Ukraine and the Ukrainian Air Force, in close cooperation with the United States and other partners, once the conditions for such a transfer have been met.
Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said Denmark will supply Ukraine with 19 F-16 fighters during a joint news conference with Ukrainian President at the Skydrupt Airways in Denmark.
We announced that we will donate 19 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Together with the Netherlands, we are the first country to make a solid and concrete commitment to donate Western fighter jets. And hopefully others will follow now.
Ukrainian officials have long asked for the advanced warplanes since the beginning of its war with Russia, which begins in February 2022. Zelensky calls the deal a breakthrough moment, but training for Ukrainian pilots could take months. The first delivery of Danish F-16s is expected around the start of the new year. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay reports.
Meanwhile, Moscow has accused Ukraine of terrorism after a fresh wave of drone attacks in Russian regions. Drone strikes, both on border regions and on the Russian capital, have become increasingly common in recent months. The Russian Foreign Ministry has said the goals of what it calls the special military operation in Ukraine have become the priority of the country's foreign policy. Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow with more.
Moscow says Ukraine attempted to attack at least 4 Russian regions on Sunday. 5 people got injured in Kursk as a drone hit a railway station that triggered a fire. In Rostov, the governor says no injuries or damage has been reported after Ukrainian kamikaze drones were intercepted by the Russian air defense systems. 2 of Moscow's airports were forced to halt air traffic as a result of an attempted drone attack. The Ministry of Defense says drones were jammed and crashed in an unpopulated area. In Belgorod region that borders Ukraine and is most often attacked by the Ukrainian armed forces, air defenses destroyed 12 airborne targets. We also have heard from the Russian Ministry of Defense saying that another drone attack was thwarted over the Belgorod region, with Russian air defenses shooting down plane-type unmanned aerial vehicles. These attacks are described in Russia as acts of terrorism. The Russian Foreign Ministry condemned those attacks against the civilian infrastructure. Commenting on what happened in Kursk, spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the attack against the railway station makes the task of denazification of Ukraine and demilitarization of Ukraine an absolute priority for Russia's foreign policy. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Canada has announced the deployment of its military forces to British Columbia, where relentless wildfires have plunged the western province into a state of emergency. The escalating infernos have forced more than 35,000 residents to evacuate their homes.
In the wake of the sweeping wildfires that have destroyed more than 54,000 square miles, the Canadian military is now intervening, their mission to quell the aggressive advancement of the fires.
We're active in coordinating with regional and local governments to make sure people are safe, make sure we're doing everything to protect lives and property. But there's a lot more to do, and we're going to continue to stay focused on that.
Amidst the chaos, multiple cities in British Columbia are still grappling with an alarming air quality index exceeding 350. Normal air quality is usually between 100 and 150. Meanwhile, British Columbia took the decisive step of declaring a state of emergency. This will allow it to facilitate swifter evacuation for displaced citizens. Currently, Canada has also enforced a ban on non-essential travel into the area.
The U.S. state of New Jersey is battling a deadly wildfire that started on Sunday in the Wharton State Forest in Camden County. Officials say the fire has already engulfed 80 hectares of land, and firefighters say it's only 5% contained. Roads leading to the area have been closed as emergency response crews continue to try to control the blaze. No structural damage has been reported. That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Julia. On to Asian region now. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen a strategic cruise missile test ahead of the start of joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. State-run news agency KCNA reported that Kim inspected one of his fleets in the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan. Few details were given, but the missiles reportedly rapidly hit target without error. KCNA says the aim was to test the missile system and assess sailors' capabilities in a real war scenario. Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States are scheduled to commence major exercises today to strengthen their joint preparedness in the face of North Korea's advancing military and cyber threats. The Allies' annual Ulche Freedom Shield exercise will last until August the 31st and involve over 58,000 South Korean and US troops. This year's exercise will feature a total of 30 joint field training drills by the Allies, 5 more than the Freedom Shield exercise held in March this year. You're with us on DD India Global, still to come on the show. As the countdown begins for Chandrayaan-3's landing on the moon, the lander module establishes successful two-way contact with the orbiter of Chandrayaan-2. Indian chess wonder star R. Pragnananda and Fabiano Caruana battle it out in the tiebreaker to decide who will contest world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in the World Cup final.
Meghalaya, the abode of clouds. A land so enchanting. It makes time stand still. With a distinctive and ethnic culture. And vibrant tribal folklore. Filled with the goodness of nature. Every day here is an adventure. Home to music, passion, and to hopes and ambitions. Welcome to the magical land of Meghalaya.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. The countdown has begun for Indian spacecraft Chandrayaan-3 as it comes closer to the moon. According to India's space agency, it's now one step away from landing on the moon. The soft landing on the lunar south pole is scheduled around 18:04 hours Indian Standard Time on August the 23rd. The lander module, according to India's space agency, has now established a two-way communication with the orbiter of the mission's predecessor, Chandrayaan-2. And joining us with more on India's moon mission is Jai Singh. Jay, what's the latest that you have? Is everything on schedule for the soft landing on August 23rd?
Well, the going is very smooth, and a very interesting fact is that the Chandrayaan-2 was launched in 2019 July, and its orbiter is still revolving around the moon. And Chandrayaan-3's lander has established contact with the Chandrayaan-2's orbiter. Both have said hello to each other. That means now ISRO has got multiple channels of communication. The Chandrayaan-3 lander itself can directly communicate to ISRO headquarters in Bangalore, where the mission operation complex in ISTRAC is there. And another route is for the Chandrayaan-3 lander to communicate to the orbiter of Chandrayaan-2. And in turn, orbiter will also send the signals back to ISRO headquarters in Bangalore. So this is a very interesting fact. Though Chandrayaan-2 was not able to have a soft landing, it was a partial success because its orbiter was a successful mission. So the orbiter is well intact and it is still alive and kicking, and it is sending signals. Now Chandrayaan-3 has also established contact with Chandrayaan-2's orbiter. This is a very useful, very interesting fact.
Okay, thank you, Jay. We all look forward to August 23rd, important milestone there to be achieved. Whole of India have their eyes on Chandrayaan-3. Let's now take a look at other stories making news across India. More than 10 people were rescued after being stuck in a reservoir at the Coal Water Dam in India's northern state of Himachal Pradesh. They were trapped after incessant rainfall caused a sudden rise in water levels, and the rescue operation lasted about 6 hours. According to officials, many of the stranded people worked for the Forest Department in the sea. The trail of destruction is not ending in Himachal Pradesh, as the Weather Service has issued a yellow alert for more heavy rain on Monday. Apart from Himachal, deluges are also forecast for the next 4 days in areas like West Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Arunachal Pradesh. 17 Indian nationals who were held captive by an armed group in Libya have been rescued and brought back to India. The Indians were being held captive in Zawara city after they were trafficked to Libya. Their return to India followed high-level intervention by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs and the Indian ambassador in Tunis. Next news from Thailand. Thailand's Pheu Thai party has unveiled an 11-party alliance to form a coalition government. The party is set to nominate real estate tycoon Sretha Thavisin to parliament. Thailand's bicameral parliament has been deadlocked for weeks on forming a government. Still with Asia, the Chinese government has approved restarting North Korea's airlines Air Koryo. The country's first commercial flight in over 3 years was cancelled on Monday at the last minute due to unknown reasons. The move comes as both countries ease travel restrictions after strict COVID-19 measures. It is a significant move as China is North Korea's biggest trade partner and neighbour. On to stories now making news across the world. Ecuador is headed for an October runoff vote in its presidential election. Leftist politician and businessman Daniel Noboa captured the second spot in Ecuador's presidential election on Sunday. He will be facing leading candidate Luisa Gonzalez in a second round of voting on October the 15th. The King of Cambodia inaugurated the parliament on Monday, marking a new chapter in the kingdom's history. After nearly 4 decades, the Cambodian leader, Hun Sen, decided to step down, handing over power to his eldest son. Incoming Prime Minister Hun Manet has also unveiled a list of the country's new lawmakers. The list includes several sons and daughters of close allies and serving ministers. Italy is witnessing its hottest week of the year as a new heat wave, Nero, hits the peninsula. With high humidity levels, temperature will remain at 38 degrees Celsius for the next 5 days in many regions. This is the third hot spell of the summer, with the forecast suggesting that the soaring temperatures could last until August 27th. US President Joe Biden is set to travel to the Hawaiian island of Maui on Monday. He will survey the damage caused by wildfires and meet survivors. The island continues to grapple with the aftermath of the devastating fires that broke out over 10 days ago. Search and rescue operations remain slow despite ongoing efforts. As per officials, 89% of the blaze has now been contained. On to sports updates now. India has unveiled the 17-member squad for the forthcoming Asia Cup. Shreyas Iyer, KL Rahul make a return to the Indian dressing room. Indian wicketkeeper batsman Sanju Samson has been designated as backup, while the promising Tilak Verma, who made a strong impression during his debut international appearance in the West Indies, has also earned a place in the squad. An Indian chess wonder boy, R. Pragnananda, and world number 2 Fabiano Caruana will play in the tiebreaker today to decide who will contest the FIDE World Cup finals against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen after drawing their second game on Sunday. The duo had also played out a draw on Saturday. Pragnananda is the first Indian after Vishwanathan Anand to reach the semi-finals of the FIDE World Cup. So that's it in this edition of DD India Global, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at DD India Live. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.